The city administration feels that the rezoning is not specifically addressed in the growth policy as being either a positive or negative change of use. It does allow the owner of a privately owned lot to use that lot for what they feel is best. But the growth policy, which speaks specifically towards things like Main Street, housing, Cottonwood Creek, things like that, it doesn't specifically address something like this. Next is that the zoning amendment is designed to facilitate the adequate provision of transportation, water, sewerage, schools, parks, and other public requirements. We don't see any expected impact on the provision of those different requirements. It's currently zoned for residential uses. Allowing a personal storage shed would not impact the capacity of city infrastructure any more, and probably less than a residential structure would. There's no desire at this time for them to hook up to city water and sewer, because it would just basically be a dry storage shed. Next is that the zoning amendment considers the effect on motorized and non-motorized transportation systems. Again, as it's currently zoned for residential uses, there's no additional impact on transportation systems because they'd pretty much be the only ones going to the lot, similar to a residential home. Next is that the zoning amendment considers the promotion of compatible urban growth. I feel that since the site is adjacent to other single-family residential structures and undeveloped lots, it is a little bit different because it is not a residential structure. However, in my opinion, the adjacency to I-90 makes developing that lot into a residential use to be kind of difficult, just because of the lack of sewer and water that are near the site. In order to bring sewer and water out to that site, it would be a significant investment on the property owner. And also just noise and things that are associated with I-90 would make that spot difficult for residents. Next is that the zoning amendment is designed to promote public health, public safety, and the general welfare. I don't see any real impact on public health, public safety, or the general welfare expected from this proposed rezoning, besides some potential impacts on adjacent property owners' sightlines. The zoning amendment considers the reasonable provision of adequate light and air. No expected impact because of the proposed rezoning. The building would be approximately the same height, maybe a little bit taller, but approximately the same height as a residential structure. And therefore, there'd be no difference to the provision of light and air as what a residential structure would allow. Next is that the zoning amendment considers the value of buildings and encourages the most appropriate use of the land throughout the jurisdictional area. Said little to no impact on value of adjacent buildings. Lots to the north and south are undeveloped, and constructing a new structure will have no effect on the value of buildings. Next is that the zoning amendment considers the character of the district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses. As the site is currently adjacent to other single-family home and some manufactured homes, as well as some sheds that are kind of just existing out there on those undeveloped lots. I see it as being suitable considering the nature of the shed as being a new build of high quality, would not have any undue impacts on the character of the district. However, I did state that the petitioner should make efforts to place the structure in a way that makes it cohesive with the surrounding homes. Things like setbacks, things like design styles and whatnot. One of the things kind of going along with it that we did talk in the planning board hearing was, keeping the yard free of weeds, keeping it mowed, keeping it look nice like a yard, maybe some landscaping, things like that, should the owner decide to do that. But just making sure that the lot, fits in and isn't overgrown by weeds or something like that. So now I'll jump on to the conditional use requirements as outlined in the zoning ordinance. Number one is that the use conforms with the objectives of the growth policy and the intent of this code. Again, not going to repeat myself, I already touched on that with the rezoning. Such use will not adversely affect nearby properties or their occupants. I do not feel that it will adversely affect nearby properties since the height and size of the structure is similar to adjacent residential structures, and no traffic increase is going to happen because it is just a personal storage shed. Again, we do have to think about the fact that there are some sight lines that would be impacted, but they'd be impacted just the same as if it was a residential structure, in my opinion. Proposed structure is newly developed and will be of high quality. Next is that such use meets density, coverage, yard height, and all other requirements of the district in which it is to be located, unless otherwise provided for in this code. The use meets all requirements of the R2 zoning code. And lastly is that public hearings have been held and the required legal notices have been given, and the public has been given a chance to be heard on the matter. We gave notice in the February 8th and February 15th editions of the Silver State. And we held a public hearing in front of the planning board on February 21st when the planning board chose to recommend it off to city council. We did send 15 letters to adjacent property owners. At the time that I wrote the staff report on February It was a little bit before February 21st, but around that time frame, right before the planning board public hearing. We hadn't received any comments concerning that application, but since then we had received a couple letters. I did scan those in to your packet as well. Got a letter from Rodney Simpson, who is opposed to the city council and the planning board accepting this conditional use permit, this rezoning application, as well as Cal and Lucy Stokes, thank you so much, who felt the same way, that they did not feel that this use was a good use of this site. So after the staff report, you can see a couple other just bits of information from the applicants regarding the size and placement of the shed. And with all this information and with the recommendation of the planning board, I recommend that the city council rezone the subject property from the R-1 residential single-family district to the R-2 single-family manufactured home district, and to permit the lot as a conditional use to accommodate the placement of this 40-foot by 60-foot shed. I do recommend that the planning board and the city council adopt the provision that the shed must only be used for personal storage and not as a commercial business, as a commercial business would further impact the transportation networks and would not be in line with the intent of the residential zone that's found in the R-2 district. All right, are there any questions for me about the status of this application before we open this up to public hearing? Rob?
So the shed's 40 by 60, but it's also got a 12 by 60 overhang. What's the actual dimensions of the property?
Actual dimensions of the property, 147 feet by 202 feet.
Okay. And that'll allow that proper setbacks, and I think it says 60%.
Correct, yeah. You can see the site layout just after kind of the sketch of the shed there. The shed would exist on less than half the lot, probably about a third of the lot, meeting all setback requirements. And then they do plan to also put an access pathway around the structure as well, so they can get in and out.
So you said that it might be a little taller. How much taller than a residential?
Depends on the residential structure. I mean, if you have a 2-story residential structure, it would probably be shorter. The size of the building itself is 16-foot inside height of the structure, but then it does have a pitched roof on top of it as well. I think we could probably safely estimate around 24 feet. Would you agree with that, Robert and Vicki? It's about 24 feet.
Something like that,
Yeah.
How did these neighbors get the impression, because when I read the letters, I got the impression that they think it's going to be a commercial use.
I can't state on whether or not how they thought that it was going to be a commercial structure. Since the get-go of this application, it's just been for personal use.
So if it's only for cars, equipment and stuff, you know, RVs.
Personal storage, if we want to put our 5th wheeler in there. Right now it's stored in Cutting Montana.
But
And we have always kept our 5th wheel in storage inside.
so you don't really need it real tall.
We need it, this is
it's gotta be
the,
that tall to get it in the door.
with our 5th wheel. That's why the height.
Just curiosity, what all you gonna store in there? Big building like that?
We have 2 storages in Anaconda, that's where we live now. And we have a garage up in Cut Bank where we used to live until we came down here. And we wanted to bring it down here to us. It's just for personal storage. Like a 5th wheeler, and we got a boat, and that's for that. Just personal storage and stuff, everything.
So just for everyone's knowledge too, the planning board did make the recommendation to approve to the city council with the condition that they keep all storage inside the building and not anything outside the building. Just so everyone knows as well.
So what is the 12-foot overhang for?
Pardon?
If you can put everything inside it, what's the 12-foot overhang for?
He just thought he should have it before, because he was.
The guy talked me into doing that, go twice.
MQS, said, and then later in, at a time, we can.
He says you can frame it and put more,
storage.
Storage place in it?
Yeah.
This is the same street, I just wanna get something clear. This is the same street where down the road towards the old folks home, we've got chickens, what
Yes,
appears to be derelict vehicles,
yes,
that you can't have anything outside your shed. Okay.
and our
I just wanna be clear on that.
There's chicken in the mold.
Yeah.
But, and it's gonna be a very nice looking building, it's not gonna be trashy, so, and we'll never, we take very good care of all our properties that we have. And it will not be nice to work for anything.
Let's continue on with questions from the city council, and then we'll take questions from the public as well, too. Anybody else have a question about
Well,
this?
yeah, we refer it to a shed, but it's actually a building, you know, and, because it'd be permanent there. A shed would be something that would be movable, that would be the assumption that we would take. And if it's a whole building like this MQS builds, I'm wondering what the building inspector would he approve a whole building on that piece of property?
So my understanding would be that the building permit would go to the state for this.
It's not residential.
Is this on a monolithic slab?
But
Is it on
I think he said he could build a building either way, either I could pour the cement, he could build a building, but they put the building down, then they pour the cement afterwards.
but there will be some.
I think what Dale was referring to is though, if you pour a monolithic slab and it becomes a permanent building, it will fall into the criteria of a shed.
Oh, this is a permanent building. That's what you're asking.
Yes.
Okay, so we can call it a building. Did you have a question, John?
Yes, I did. You were talking about the sightlines. Are the sightlines the ones that wrote in the responses, or is it your guys' sightline? Whose sightline is affected by this building?
You
Yours?
mean where it's placed on the property?
Yeah.
We're down there.
No,
It-
you.
It would be the residential owners directly to the west of where the building would go.
Okay. But it's not one of the two people that sent in the,
Oh, I think it is, John. If you look at Bielenberg, Simpsons live right on that corner.
They live on the other end of the block,
Exactly.
the north end of that block.
okay.
It's Smith's, then me, then the lady from Anaconda, then Simpson's.
Any other questions?
So we only have the 2 letters of this,
Correct,
please?
yes. All right, at this time, if there's no further questions or clarification, we'll go ahead and open this up for public hearing. Feel free to rise, state your name and address, and say your piece about this structure.
So I'm Julie Thompson, I live at 810 Buhlenberg. I'm directly across the street from where this would be. And I think it's going to be an improvement because those lots over there are never mowed. Jim Smith brings in a mower and does that, but the grass gets really high. It's a danger. And I'm all for improvement in our town. I don't have a problem with it at all. And it would be directly across the street from my house.
Any other comments from members of the public? Going once, going twice? All right, if there's nothing else, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll open this up for action items to vote on the approval of the conditional use permit and rezoning application.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion
Second.
approved. Second. Dick Bowman?
Oh, let's see, is there any other discussion to have, or any other comments from the public before we take a vote?
I have one comment. In one of the letters, it states that they, some of the neighbors had put in for different things and were denied. So we approved this, will they be able to reapply and get what they wanted approved?
I am not aware of what Mr. Simpson is talking about in his letter there. It looks like he is stating that people applied in the Woodward Minor subdivision to establish the R-2 district. It is currently R-1. Technically, R-1 is a lower density district than R-2, so his statement that they want to establish a low density R-2 single family zone, I don't really understand what he means by that. I would have to do research to see if that ever happened at some point in the past, but I'm not aware of what he's talking about.
Oh.
But any citizen can file for a variance or a conditional use. We certainly would accept any of those and take them through the committees and the vote.
And it goes on a case-by-case basis, following those requirements that we listed out, that are listed in the zoning code, which the public's had a chance to look at the requirements, state law, speaks to the requirements, and, that we follow every time for each one of these things.
Any further comment from the public or the council? Proceeding with the vote. Dick Ballman,
Yes.
Kirk Velstead,
Yes.
Jackie Greenwood,
Yes.
John Henderson,
Yes.
Robert Kirsch,
Yes.
John Mullendyke,
Yes.
Joseph Callahan.
Yes.
Gordon Pearson is absent. We have 7 yeas, no nays. That motion was passed.
Well, thank you for being here.
Okay, moving on to item number 4B, 619 Kentucky Street, major home occupation. Jordan, you're up again.
All right. Let me put note here. All right, so our next staff report that you see is another one that was recommended by the planning board. A couple things that the planning board wanted to send over to city council too, which we'll talk about later. But the gist of it was that the planning board did recommend this to city council. Christopher Meyer of 619 Kentucky Street submitted a conditional use permit application in January, seeking permission to have a major home occupation operate out of garage on their property to perform low-volume automotive repair services. You can see after the staff report there where that lot is. It's just over on Kentucky, halfway between Van Gundy and St. Mary's Avenue. The garage is in the back northeast corner of that property behind the home. You can also see some supporting pictures near to the back of the staff report as well to kind of show you what that garage looks like that the planning board requested that the applicant submit to us. As the parcel is located in the R-1 residential single-family district, a conditional use permit is required for a major home occupation to have a business be based off of a residential property. So we'll go ahead and follow through the requirements that are specified in the zoning ordinance as far as a conditional use permit. One is that the use conforms with the objectives of the growth policy and the intent of this code. This is a pretty similar comment that I made to some of the other home-based automotive repair ones that we have approved in the past. So a lot of that you'll see repeated if you remember things from a couple months ago when we looked on the west side of town and whatnot. Did say that the use conforms with the growth policy by allowing a small local business to operate within Deer Lodge. Again, kind of like the last application though, the growth policy speaks primarily about Main Street, parks, annexation, Cotton Creek. And so there's little in the growth policy that directly impacts this petition besides allowing a local resident to operate a business. Next is that such use will not adversely affect nearby properties or their occupants. Again, this is very similar to what we did for that one on the west side over there. Low volume automotive repair service garage has the potential to affect nearby properties. I think we can all agree with that. Noise associated with work, potential for soil and groundwater contamination, presence of vehicles and vehicle parts, and increased traffic to the site are all issues that need to be addressed. Therefore, I did recommend to attach a variety of conditions should this application be approved, which are outlined in the recommendation section of the staff report and in the requirements listed in the zoning ordinance for a major home occupation. These steps will mitigate the potential for adverse impact on nearby properties. And they're, like I said, similar to previous major home occupations that have been approved by the city council. And they were also informed by testimony from to the city planners from the applicants as well. You guys have reviewed the major home occupation requirements, reviewed the recommendations, and they're in line with what your business model is. So as far as that's concerned, we're good there. Such use meets density, coverage, yard height, and all other regulations in the district in which it's to be located. The applicant has no plans to change the building footprints, adding any additions, or substantially renovating the property in a way that's to be considered a substantial improvement. Thus, the proposed use meets requirements of the code, and any non-compliance that's currently in place would be considered a non-conforming grandfathered in use. Further changes to the building, if they wanted to do it in the future, would have to be approved at that time by the planning board and the city council, through something like a variance. Next is that public hearings have been held after the required legal notices have been given and the public has been given a chance to be heard on the matter. We sent out 18 letters to adjacent property owners to ask for comments. We did have one favorable response at the time of the staff report. You can see that from Robert and Joanna Race in the back of your application, or the back of your staff report. We ran it again in the 8th and 15th editions of the Silver State. We held a public hearing on February 21st where the planning board decided to recommend this to the city council subject to the recommendations that are listed in the bottom of the staff report. At the planning board public hearing, we also received a couple more favorable responses, one from Diana Soley, one from the property owner at 700 Kentucky, who's an adjacent landowner who's fine with it as well. So all that being said, the recommendation from the city administration and the planning board is a favorable recommendation for the CUP for the major home occupation, subject to the provisions that are listed under the recommendations page. I'll just kind of scroll through those real quick. But they have to remain adherent to the zoning ordinance requirements for a major home occupation. You can find those a couple pages down. The applicants make all efforts to restrict noise, dirt, dust, and automotive contaminants from leaving the property boundary and to prevent contaminants from affecting soil or groundwater. The applicants alert us if they want to have any changes to the use of the parcel, and they would have to get our written permission that the changes do remain adherent to the provisions of the zoning ordinance and the major home occupation requirements. Next, that all vehicles are contained on the property and are not stored in the city right of way for longer than 72 hours. That's city code as listed in Title 10. 72 hours is the length of time that a car can remain on the street if it's not in front of your own house. Next is that the applicants keep oil drums, salvage parts, automotive equipment, any other items associated with their business organized and out of sight from adjacent properties and city right of way whenever possible. Next is that all potentially toxic materials are properly disposed of, meeting state and federal regulations for automobile disposal. Next is that pretty much any projects that have the potential to create noise or light are completed between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. following the requirements of our major home occupation. Next, that any renovations or additions to the garage will need the written approval of the city administrator to confirm that they conform with the zoning ordinance, and if they don't conform, they would have to come again before this board. Next is that the applicants obtain all necessary building permits from the city's building department and follow all the regulations prescribed by the building inspector. Again, there's no changes expected or anticipated or requested to the building footprint, so nothing would need to be required at this time, but in the future, should you need to do that, you'd have to talk to our building inspector and more than likely talk to the planning board and city council. And lastly is that the failure to meet any of the above considerations and the considerations of the major home occupation requirements should be considered grounds for immediate revocation of the petitioner's building license and or business license and the ability to operate the major home occupation. So I'll kind of run through real quick. Again, after 2 pages, you see the requirements for major home occupation. You see the application followed by a use statement from Chris Miner talking about the property, his business practices, his plans for the site, things like that. Again, we did look at this pretty extensively in planning board and found that everything that was mentioned in this use statement conforms with the major home occupation requirements. Next, you see a quick little site plan for what the use of the property would look like. Again, no changes, but you can see the long driveway that would house approximately 8 spaces for vehicles. On the street, you would have 1 spot that would be used for temporary drop-off and pickup, but a vehicle would not remain there for very long at all. It would be moved into the driveway or the garage. And then you see the garage in the back of the property there. I just included the copy of the business license application, certification from the Montana Secretary of State for the creation of the business, and then you do see that letter from Bob and Joanna Race in support of the project. Real quick, before we move on to the public hearing or answering any questions that y'all may have before the public hearing, I'll direct your attention to the pictures at the back of the staff report. Those are pictures of the garage as seen from the street and seen up close. Got a ladder to scale so you can see things. The biggest issue that we ran into at the planning board meeting was that the major home occupation requirements only allow a 3 square foot sign to advertise the business. And you can see that the sign that is placed there, that would be placed there in perpetuity, or at least as long as the business is operational, is larger than 3 square feet. So the planning board decided to leave that up to the discretion of the city council, should they want to make them remove the sign and replace it with another one, or determine that the sign had negligible impact. Are there any questions from members of the city council before we open this up to public hearing?
I guess my first question is, what do you consider room walking? There's not a lot of parking space there. They're pretty tight against the road there, so.
Right. Like I wouldn't imagine like 2 or 3 cars a day maximum, and that's, you know, that's with minimal client traffic. So like I say, if it's several quick jobs in and out, I'd say maybe 3 a day, most likely less most of the time. And then anything that requires more longer term lead times on parts, machining, whatever, I would do everything possible to get it either back to, you know, the owner's house for storage until the vehicle is ready to be worked on, or have off-site indoor parking if need be, like for a store, like a storage unit or something, as that effect, to keep it out of sight, if necessary. I'll do everything I can to prevent that even, but yeah, so quick turnaround, and then like 3 maximum cars per day. Clients in and out, I would say, you know, 3 or 4 maximum, and I don't expect to see that very often.
And you probably don't plan to be parking down in the driveway, or are you gonna park anything out in front? Or is that gonna be just your personal vehicles out front, or?
Out front is typically where she parks, and there's a short spot in front of her that a small car could park in, and then there's kind of a mound of dirt behind her car that's been frozen the whole time we've been here. I'd like to dig that out to where there's 2 full spots in front, to where we're not, you know, blocking the neighbor at all, but anything parked in front of her car would be very, very, very transient, very in and out. You know, usually not even there overnight, if I can help it at all, so.
And again, one of the recommendations from the planning board was 72 hours maximum following our code. Should be something for code to keep an eye on. Any other questions?
I would address that sign, as you see it from the street, it's almost, you can't hardly read it in the picture, so that doesn't, I'd be in favor of keeping the sign as that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say I appreciate the use statement that you gave. It gives us a really good, clear picture of, you know, your intended use and everything, and I wish more of these had that.
Yeah, I always ask people to provide me as much detail as they can, and when you sent that back to me later that day, it was about the best one I think I've ever gotten.
Well, I don't know, I'm not much of a writer, but I figured I'd, you know, just put in as much as I could think of, you know, when I sat down to do it, so. But
We appreciate it. Are there any other questions from either members of the public at this time as far as clarification on this application, or from members of the city council?
I've got a question. What do you do, like engine overhauls and stuff?
pretty much everything. I'm ASE master certified. The major limitation right now is just the clearance that I can achieve underneath the vehicle to say, you know, modern vehicles that have transverse engines, you can't really do a whole lot of engine work without removing the vehicle from the powertrain. So with certain limitations in place, it's, like I said, I pretty much diagnose and repair anything on a vehicle. The logistics and the, just being able to get the car off the ground far enough to do certain things is the only limitations. But as far as like capability and aptitude and willingness, I can do pretty much anything. So as long as it's obviously considerate to neighbors, and, you know, like I obviously wouldn't be bringing around large vehicles, you know, like, you know, bucket trucks or anything larger than a 1-ton truck. So, but yeah, so.
Any other questions at this time?
Do you have plans on keeping the flammables and flame-proof containers
porch tank separate, that kind of thing?
I need
OSHA
to,
standard?
I need to get, separate containment cabinets for flammables. Those would be probably gonna be outside the garage, for the time being at least, like, you know, fuel and stuff.
You got ventilation that way?
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
There is ventilation from the back of the garage to the front of the garage, so if I have a fan moving air through there, any kind of fuel fumes or the like can move through completely. So,
Right, if there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public hearing. Ask that anybody who has a comment about this proposed application would rise, state your name and address, and say your piece.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Greg Larkins. I live at 919 Missouri Avenue, and I rise in support of this project tonight. When I saw the public notice for a conditional use permit for a major home occupation and saw what the use was going to be, the automotive repair service, I had lots of questions, lots of concerns. I feel that Mr. Minor answered all those questions thoroughly, and I urge, I am satisfied with those answers, and I urge you to pass for this proposition. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment regarding this matter? All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. We'll open this up for,
I move we approve the conditional use permit.
With,
with the attached recommendations.
With the signage, yep.
I would second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any members of the council have any other further comments or questions before we move forward to the vote? Any members of the public have any further comments or questions before we move forward to the vote? Rick Baldwin.
Yes.
Kurt Felstead.
Yes.
Jackie Greenwood.
Yes.
John Henderson.
Yes.
Robert Kirsch.
Yes.
John Mullenbeck.
Yes.
Joseph Callahan.
Yes.
Court Pearson is still absent. So you have 7 yeas, no nays. Motion is passed.
Congratulations. I will get Gina at the front desk a copy of your approved building permit or business license tomorrow. I'll attach all those recommendations just so you have a copy of them too, and you'll be good to go.
when should I come pick that up, or?
She'll give you a call.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'll give it to her as approved tomorrow, and she'll give you a call when she's got it processed.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Moving on to item number 5 would be the department reports. Let's start with Chief Administrative Officer. York.
All right, I'll just make a couple notes about some things that I wanted to bring up. First, under city planning, that first bullet point, we did bring this up last city council meeting. We did submit our updated action items that the city and Powell County had to the firms, so we'll be incorporating those. We did get our right-of-way encroachment permits approved from MDT to install those speed radar signs at both ends of Main Street. Those were approved to purchase, so we went ahead and sent back in the quote as approved, and they'll be shipping them in here shortly. The growth policy survey has been approved by the planning board. We'll begin advertising here shortly. We're expecting that growth policy, the survey to run through the course of the entirety of March. So I'll be getting that information in the Silver State and be blasting out to everyone that needs to know it. Here probably either tomorrow or when I get back from the executive forum. But yeah, we'll get that out as soon as possible to as many people. I urge everyone here to take it, and I urge everyone to tell as many people as possible to take it too. It's a good survey, and I think we'll get a lot of good answers from it. Let's see here. Under grants, we did receive a notice of recommendation for $342,500 for the RDGP cycle for the continued remediation of the passenger fueling area. They haven't had executive action on the bill yet, but a vote yes is anticipated. At the very top of the second page there was a grant that we applied for the Montana Main Street program. We received word that we did not get that, so we'll be changing our strategy on that. I did testify to the legislature on the Montana Historic Preservation Grant application that we all talked about, last year I think. That was for renovations and an architecture report to be done on City Hall. We ranked really lowly on that, 43 out of 48. But I did get a call 2 weeks ago from one of the legislators, one of our local legislators who's on the committee that makes the recommendations. And they said that after they looked at a couple things and after hearing testimonies and everything, they actually changed stuff up around enough that we're in the running for funding for that project now. So that was a huge win. We're really excited to hear that. We'll be keeping an eye on amendments and everything just to make sure that we're expecting to receive the same amount of funding, but that was really nice to hear, and we hope that we continue to get it. So if anybody wants to call the local legislatures to recommend that they support that, please do. Let's see, we'll have that second public hearing for the transportation, or we'll have that public hearing for the transportation alternatives grant for the same council meeting in March. So just be on the lookout for that. We'll be talking about it again. I testified on a couple other bills this last month or two, both in support and not in support of some of them. Working with the Brianna Roan Foundation to strategize Memorial Park on city-owned floodway property. They're working on a pitch right now. We'll probably be seeing some information here in the near future. So that was an exciting conversation. I hope it does well for us and for them. I think that was more or less everything I wanted to cover there. We did get our right-of-way encroachment for the North Gateway sign approved. We're waiting for our approval on our outdoor advertising permit. So I'll let you all know when we get that, and then hopefully we'll be working on getting that North Gateway sign in here soon. We want to point out real quick that I did issue the first business license for our first medical and adult use marijuana dispensary late last week. So we'll probably see them starting to set up shop here soon, out behind the old passing shop behind Golden Spike. And that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
On your grants,
Yeah.
as far as Cottonwood Creek goes and everything,
Mm-hmm.
Monty suggested that you contact like Ducks Unlimited, because we know we have mallards in there. Monty and I saw two males fighting over a female one day. We stood there and watched them. RMEF, all these would probably be more than willing to help us out. And Wildlife Forever and Ducks Unlimited might, because I guess there's houses for wood ducks, and if they build the houses, we might get some wood ducks in there.
Interesting.
So,
Might be a good idea for a future park along the river or something.
well, if you contact them and everything, yeah, like in the spring, they might be, Ducks Unlimited might just, come and revamp that area for the ducks. You can ask them.
Good to know. Thank you.
Did you have more?
Reading the paper, this is not on the lighter side. You did an interview regarding the fairgrounds. And one of the things that was said was that agreed to grounds improvement and not raise its rates in exchange for the money that we got from the county to go towards the well. So what rates did you agree not to raise in exchange for this money? Because they've already got 50 years worth of water and sewage.
That is what the article was referencing, was the 50 years of no payment. If the article didn't say it like that, that's what I told the newspaper. But that there's no additional, everything that we've talked about regarding the fairgrounds and that negotiation has been, there's nothing else that's changed.
Because I got the impression that there was something else.
Nothing else is happening.
The only thing the city charges anybody for is water sewer coverage. That's the only thing we're allowed to by law. And just for a point of order, in no way did that agreement have anything to do with sewage. The sewer part of that was not in that agreement at all. Water was the only thing that was discussed.
Well, isn't sewage part of the
No.
water bill?
No.
It is part of mine.
It's part of your bill,
Three
but they're
things on-
separate.
Three things on that bill. There's water, sewer, and
And sewer bond. So your bill is one bill, but it contains 4 different bills.
So theirs doesn't?
No, yes, but the only thing that was negotiated is we're no longer charging them for water.
Oh, okay.
Just
Okay, because
And only
it
for
gave
50
me the
years.
impression there was something underlying there.
No, there's
the only thing in that agreement is what you voted on.
Okay,
That's always.
Any other comments?
Yeah, on the municipal budget, are we meeting all of our deadlines that we need to, requirements and everything
Deadlines for what? Like
for submitting that?
submitting the budget? Yeah, we're working with the people that we submit these things to. Have we submitted the municipal budget yet? Magda was working on it last week. Okay, we do have a contractor that Judy used to work with as well to submit the municipal budget in the AFR. And she's been working on it. There were a couple things that we need to do first in order to get that ready. But we've spoken to the people that we submit these things to, and we're not out of any sort of compliance necessarily.
Okay, that was my main concern.
Yeah, no,
And then, yeah, my other comment was just thanks for doing your work with the legislature. I know that's time consuming and kind of intimidating.
well, when things happen, and thank you, Rob, but when things happen like that historic preservation grant, then I think it makes it worth it, so I was happy to do it.
Any other questions for what?
one more thing, again. It says the, code enforcer is going around, inventorying abandoned residential properties throughout town to apply for the CDBG Housing Stabilization Funding for renovations, demolition, and reconstruction. When this was brought up before about knocking things down or renovating and stuff, y'all said that we had no way of doing that, and now we do?
We have no way of requiring it.
So this is entirely different grant program. This would be something for existing property owners or people who want to go buy a property. The housing stabilization funds are used for existing property owners or people who want to go buy a property to use funding from that fund to repair a house so that if they are low income eligible or they're renting or selling to someone low income eligible, keeps prices low so that houses remain affordable. It's basically a way that people can receive funding in order to do necessary improvements on their homes in order to keep them livable, or to demolish them and build a new house. So it's not something that the city is going around doing. It's just funding that we would hold as the city and administer for people to come in and apply for funding through us.
So why don't the homeowners do this, apply, come here and apply?
That's what they would
Instead
do.
of the code enforcer spending his time doing that, instead of going after his regular job.
So the reason he's doing that is so we have more information when we do apply for this funding. It's still a grant application, it's still somewhat competitive. And so the most information we can get about showing the need in town for these funds, the better. There's so many people in town that have a home that is dilapidated or abandoned. They live out of town maybe, they live in another house in town, they have an abandoned home, they don't have any money to fix that home up. If they can come to the city and apply for funding to fix it up, maybe they're more likely to do it. Helps improve our housing stock in town, but in order to receive grant funding, we need to be able to show that there's a clear need in the community for this. And so getting a housing inventory in place for something like that shows that there is a clear need.
And I would say that's strictly in line with his duties.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is his job. Any other questions for Jordan before we move on? The next report up will be for Public Works. Trent isn't here tonight, but myself and Jordan would be happy to try to answer anything we could. Take a look at that, see if there's other questions. Trent will be back next Monday.
So last meeting, we had a complaint from the public. Did they actually follow through and identify the pothole that they were complaining about?
I've got no written complaints that I'm aware of.
I can't remember.
It was on Conley. They've done some work up on Texas, so I'm sure they've done it on Conley.
But the survey is coming out here pretty quick. Getting into spring, so they'll be doing the survey of all the roads here coming up pretty quick. And they'll all be rated like every other street in town is. We'll decide which ones we're gonna do in, hopefully in June.
So on that sewer utilities where the frequent sewer backups on 1100 block of Kentucky, is that going to be a big concern here?
Yeah, just talking about that the other day. He's actually putting in a claim through MMIA on that. They think they're there's possibly a defect in our system on the street there. So it looks like we're gonna have to put an insurance claim on that and get it repaired.
They're still trying to identify exactly
Exactly
what's
what the problem
causing
is.
the problem. There's a couple ideas about what could be happening. A lot of it could potentially be under people's houses, but it's a city main. Back in the day, not everyone did city mains under streets. So we're trying to figure out exactly what we would do to look at remediating that situation. But there's a little bit more research that needs to be done before we know exactly what to do.
Other comments?
When I have one thing, the mosquito abatement, they shouldn't be doing that mosquito spraying in the middle of the day. When the animals are out, kids are out, I mean, that's not healthy for anybody. Most towns in that, cities, they do this at night so that nobody's getting sprayed along with the mosquitoes.
I'm sure that gets mentioned to Trent. I don't know what their regulations are, to be honest with you. I'm sure they go to school every year to learn the rules, so.
Yeah, but that's not good to be spraying people and people's pets and things.
Any other comments from anyone? Next up will be the Deer Lodge Police Report. Chief of Police is also not here, but there's his report. And again, myself and Jordan will do our best to answer any questions you have.
The only comment that I would have is on MCE doing that work is, and then the decals that go on the side of the vehicle would be visible.
I hope so. That one is, you can't hardly see it.
The one you can't.
And we had discussed that, so
Yeah,
we'll-
exactly.
yeah.
And I just thought I'd bring it up again.
And I haven't seen the final bill yet, of course, but the bid or the estimate was substantially lower than we had been paying, so that was a good stroke of business going through MCE. Hope it works out. We'll see here shortly. Any other comments about George's? All right, we're gonna move on to Brant, Fire Chief. Brant, you're up.
I'll just submit my report. I won't read everything off. You guys, if you want to ask any questions, you can. The only thing I'll add to it is I had a retiree line me out in the last couple of weeks. Somehow, of course, as busy as I get, I missed, last year was the 150th year of the Deer Lodge Fire Department.
Wow.
So just chatted with Luke today. We're gonna try to do a big write-up in the paper and a nice story. If you have any comments you wanna add, we'll be meeting Wednesday if you wanna come add anything.
What time Wednesday meet?
2:30.
I'll send you an email, I'll be back down there.
Okay. Otherwise, that's all I got.
Yeah. So is there anything that we can do to help you guys out with the issues you guys have been having with traffic control on rollovers and such?
Yeah, I don't know.
Lighting,
Yeah.
because
The only thing that, you know, we've chatted, in our post-incident debriefings and stuff, and I don't know necessarily if it'd help, but a lot of other departments are going with like a half-ton pickup with a big fold-up light. And you can type in what you want to type in the cab real quick, and it tells you, you know, right lane closed, left lane closed, emergency head, or whatever. And they run that as like basically a traffic type vehicle, and they fill it full of cones and everything else, and that sort of keeps our big equipment out of the mix. But on the same note, if you go into like traffic incident management, which we get trained up on pretty much yearly, they want a big truck out there to absorb a blow if something does come wheeling into the thing. So I don't know if there's a proper, if you could get out there and get people to start driving with a brain, that would help.
I noticed today that stop signs are only a suggestion. 'Cause
Yeah.
going to his house and coming home, people were just, it was only a suggestion.
Yeah, the stuff in town's pretty minor. I mean, we've had our hydrant hose ran over and stuff like that. It makes you mad, but when you got semis coming at you at 70 miles an hour on sheer ice highways, that's a completely different ballgame. I just don't know if there's a good answer for it right now.
Well, I have one question for you. On department happenings, you said training from Powell EMS on February 28th so that
Tomorrow.
you can start carrying Narcan on board in case y'all get exposure.
Yep.
So if there's such a fentanyl thing going on, shouldn't you have enough?
Yeah.
Like if somebody else, like John Q.
I
Public,
worded that probably poorly. We are getting fully trained for not only if we have an accidental exposure, but if we are on scene and we see somebody overdosing, we will have it on hand for everything.
I know that some schools actually have it on hand too,
Yeah.
just,
It's a big movement, and the state of Montana actually passed a bill, I believe, in the last legislative session that it's free. As long as we're trained to recognize the symptoms of it, et cetera, we can carry it. It has a 2-year shelf life, so I just gotta remember to kind of sign it in and remember when we put it in the truck, and if it doesn't get used, cycle it out, put some new stuff in every 2 years. Mostly what they give out is a nasal dosage, so they don't want to stabbing people with needles, which is kind of boring, but yeah, mostly it's like a nasal squeeze,
Yeah.
multi-use, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but if you've seen it at all, a lot of people that have an accidental exposure and an overdose come to after they're administered, and 10 minutes later they're right back into overdosing again because they got so much of it. So
yeah, there was one cop on the news that she got 3 doses of Narcan and still had to go to the hospital, EDQ.
it's everywhere, and as much as we touch vehicles and go into houses with smoke, it's time that we probably get ready for it instead of being caught off guard.
Yeah.
So is fentanyl a big problem here in town right now?
It's big everywhere,
big,
but
so-
yeah, I believe we're having an issue in our local community.
So how come the police numbers don't bear that out?
It's totally out. It's not.
It's
part-
not
this
out
is
of
the
the-
fire department report.
Well,
right?
what I'm saying is I can put 2 and 2 together, right? I don't have to go by your plans. I can go ahead and say, I see one call for drugs on the police section, and I hear him saying there's a drug problem. So I see them as connected because I believe drugs are illegal.
Well, I'll just settle the situation for a second and answer for Billy a little bit. I know they're trained and they're ready for that situation too.
Yeah.
They're not gonna let somebody, I believe they carry Narcan on board as well.
I'm sure of it, but I want the statistics as well to bear out what's going on in
okay.
town here in this meeting so that we're all aware.
I see what you're getting at, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
That would probably be a question for Powell EMS. They're the ones that would get a lot
I
of
think all
those.
3 of you need to get together as EMS and come together and say, this is what we're seeing, and get real statistics.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the fire chief? Moving on to the recreation report. He's not here either. Looks like he's got a cornhole going on right now, and he's getting ready to start pickleball. I don't know if there's anything else going on. Anybody have any other questions I can try to answer for you?
Not that I've heard of.
Where's this cornhole and pickleball, and where's it at?
Well, the cornhole I know they do at the Penn Convention Center for the most part. Pickleball, I'm not sure where they're doing that at.
I don't either.
I'll find out.
We'll be seeing Sean at more of these second council meetings too, as things start to pick back more up.
Well, it says pickleball started in February, so
Mid-February,
it's
yeah.
already
I honestly
started.
don't know where they play. I just don't know.
Yeah.
But that's a good question.
Need to have their communication.
Yes, we've asked him to come to more of these second hearings in the month, second.
And we'll make sure that
And
happens.
he's got to start coming so we can ask these questions. The man who knows the answers.
So who's the rec board committee member?
I'm sorry, what was
Who's
that?
the rec board committee
If
member?
there is a recreation.
It's
board.
with public health,
Yeah,
or
yes.
public works, right?
Public Works
Correct,
now.
yes. Okay. Which hasn't met in a month at least.
Well, don't we have a meeting
We have one tomorrow, yeah, because we didn't have a forum last month.
All righty, at this time I'd accept those reports as written.
And would we accept as written?
Do I have a second? Second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please indicate by saying aye. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6, with mayor and council concerns. Any member of the council have any concerns about anything that's not on tonight's agenda?
Well, I think the city council should get more information when something comes up regarding servers and whatnot. I think because we didn't get all the information. I mean, Rob was throwing out that dollar figure and nobody else had it. It wasn't in the packet. I mean, it was an incomplete report as far as
That
I'm
dollar
concerned.
figure was based on what we paid in the past for
Well,
servers.
and that's why I think, the past is, past. That shouldn't be brought up as current or anything. That, we should be, the whole city council should be apprised of all the details that go into a contract that we're supposed to vote on.
Correct, and that's when those questions came up, and it was not complete, that's why we
But
tabled that.
we don't even know where the server is, we don't know how big it is, or nothing.
And that's why we tabled that motion.
Yeah.
And it's going back to the
But on
finance
this-
committee. The finance committee is going to meet Monday. If you're interested in getting whatever those answers, I need time to go to that committee and ask those questions.
And we discuss these things in a quorum so that everyone hears all the conversation we have.
And then it'll come back to city council once some of those questions have been answered.
Well, one of the questions, in case I can't make it, is, where everything is, how big it is, what kind it is. The city council, I think we need to know these
It's
things.
fine, ma'am, and that's
I
why.
want to make an informed decision, not something that's
Perfect. And like I said,
incomplete.
at the finance committee meeting, all those questions get answered, and then it'll come back to this room for this committee to answer. So those questions, hopefully we'll have those answers for you. And if not, we can ask them at the proper time when we have the information in front of us. I don't know, and what do you mean by how big? You want to know the dimensions of the
Well,
server, or how much data it holds? I don't even
How
understand the
much
question.
data, what
That's
kind of server,
Then ask that question.
what capacity,
Then put that.
are we gonna put it up for bid?
Probably not.
Because
Because
how do
we
you know
can't-
we're getting the best deal? Because we're getting, an IT company is recommending them.
It's the IT company that we contract with.
Well, exactly, so how much are they getting for a referral?
We have a contract. with
You
them.
can laugh and you can roll your eyes.
Jackie, I'm
but-
not making laughing. I'm trying to explain to you the way this works. We have a contract with an IT company that handles our IT things here at City Hall. We're not gonna buy a server from another company and expect our current IT company to work with it.
Well,
But we are gonna bring the recommendation that our IT company, who's more of an expert on this matter than pretty much most of us.
They
in this
can't even
room.
keep our emails secure, come on.
That was not the IT company's fault. And we will
They
take
were
their
so-
recommendation and we will discuss it at city council. And then we will ask our questions, we'll bring that back to them and we'll
Why
get the
isn't it
answers.
their fault? They're supposed to keep our stuff secure. So tell me why it's not their fault.
Because you answered an email from somebody else.
Well, actually, even the
They
reg,
were
Point of order.
Point of order.
They
There'll be a
were
time for
hacked.
public comment in a moment.
The emails were hacked. So, yes, the IT company should be held accountable.
First of all, our emails were not hacked. Nobody's gotten into our system. Nobody has hacked our emails.
Well, they were able to send,
They're able to
bogus
send,
emails.
yes, anybody can send a bogus email. You could get on the computer right now and set up a Google account and put Rob Kirsch's name on there, robkirsch@gmail.com, pick that and send it to me. Nobody hacked our system. That was a simple problem that we had over a year ago that's been addressed, and this is not the time to address it.
Well, I don't know, I just think in order to get the best deal, whether we're lawfully required or not, to put something out for bid to try and get the best deal.
Okay, we're gonna be discussing this at the next city council because it's gonna be an agenda item. Thanks for bringing up your concern. Any other council concerns?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment for the record. The city council, all city council members get this agenda packet prior to the meetings, okay? And it's your responsibility, every one of our responsibility to go through this packet. And if we have questions, contact people prior to the meeting. Get your, questions answered or, provide input. Say, hey, I need to know, what the server size is. I need to know what server software is running, etc. If you have questions, bring them up to the staff Thursday, Friday, Monday, and that's how this work is supposed to work.
I get
Okay,
that, but that's why we also have
Point of order.
question and
Point of order.
answer.
It's not for discussion.
Anybody else, and then we'll put that in public comment, or council concern before we move on. Moving on to item number 7, continued business items. We have none. Moving on to item number 8. I would ask permission,
Yeah.
I would ask permission to move item number F to the top of the list, as we have a guest that's going to speak on this topic, and we just want to keep them around all evening if we can help it. Do you have any objections to moving item F to the front?
I move we move item F to the front.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Item number F is resolution 2023-R-1, resolution in support of an abstract submission by the Clark Fork Coalition to the 2023 update of the Clark Fork River Basin Aquatic and Terrestrial Resource Restoration Plan.
I'll give that's a long time. I'll give just a very quick overview. You can see the resolution and a draft app or an abstract from a couple years ago at the back of your packet there. We do have Andy Fisher with the Clark Fork Coalition to speak on behalf of a new abstract submittal. You did receive an updated copy. Didn't have time to make it into your packet, so it's in a lot of ways the same, very similar vein, but this is the updated one that you have in front of you. Andy's asked us on behalf of Clark Fork Coalition to submit a resolution supporting Clark Fork Coalition's abstract submittal. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Andy, to speak on what that abstract is, and we'll see if there are any questions.
Great, yeah. Thanks, Jordan, and ladies and gentlemen of the council and public. Andy Fisher of the Clark Fork Coalition. I'm a project manager based out of Zero Lodge here. I worked with the council back in 2018 to submit a similar resolution and an abstract. This relates to the natural resource damage program in the Upper Clark Fork. They have a settlement account and some of the historic Superfund damages for doing restoration along the river and some of the key tributaries in the Clark Fork. And every 5 years they update their restoration plan to identify new priorities, new opportunities, and their account also generates interest that they're able to allocate potentially to new ideas and project opportunities. And this is something that I've recognized as a priority. Powell County and the city in the past has, is that there have been historic floods in multiple years, as recently as 2011 in the Cottonwood Creek floodplain that have changed how Cottonwood Creek behaves and interacts. It's caused significant damage to the floodplain. And this proposal simply is to seek state resources through the Natural Resource Damage Program to potentially implement restoration activities along Cottonwood Creek, riparian habitat improvements along Cottonwood Creek. That would involve things like improving stream banks with by adding plantings and riparian vegetation in areas where perhaps there's been erosion or riprap that's been placed. It's not to necessarily replace the floodplain functions that Cottonwood Creek provides, but there's a lot of energy when we get floodwaters coming down Cottonwood Creek that have scoured out the creek in places. For example, the city and county have acquired numerous properties along Cottonwood Creek that are in the floodplain. As it sits along these properties, there hasn't been a lot that's occurred along them, and this proposal would essentially look at options, working with engineers. How do we look at what's going on in these specific properties and try to enhance some of the vegetation and floodplain function along these properties? And so essentially I'm put together a narrative in your packet of where some of those properties are located, some of the general goals associated with how that approach would go, and looking for outside resources to bring in cost share that would try to improve some of the floodplain function through these properties along Cottonwood Creek. There is potential match that would have to come into play that the Clark Park Coalition and other partners would have to raise for this to happen. That we've proposed as part of this. Those funds in the Upper Clark Park through the damage program, restoration program, and their update are competitive. They allocate them to different tributaries and parts of the river. There's been a great deal of work in Upper Cottonwood Creek already done. There's been numerous habitat improvements, fish screens higher up in the watershed, but there's been very little work downstream in the last mile through Geolodge, where we primarily have more of an urban stream channel that's certainly more difficult to manage, and some natural features have potentially been damaged through some of the past flooding in Cotton Creek. So that's kind of a quick overview, and I guess I'm happy to sort of field questions from Jordan or council members or related to this proposal.
Thanks, Andy. Well, I'll just ask the big one I can think of off the bat is, you mentioned match, where do you expect to raise that from?
Yeah, there's quite a few different sources for these types of projects. There's private foundations that will sometimes match these types of efforts if it's going to result in improved habitat for fish and wildlife species along the creek. We've gone to Fish, Wildlife, and Parks before. They have a couple different programs available. There's other nonprofits that I think I heard even earlier tonight, places like Ducks Unlimited. We work with quite a few different sources out there, and been successful in usually finding match if there's a compelling need for these types of projects. And so when I say match, it's not obligating the city to providing this match by any means. It's that we would work with the city and county and other nonprofit partners in the area to try to identify sources that could leverage the limited state dollars that are available for this, because it's becoming more and more competitive to secure some of these state dollars in different areas. And anytime we can find, other programs, whether they be state, federal, local, nonprofit programs that can contribute towards this effort, helps extend the benefit of what these funds can do. Currently, I think there's about, roughly $400,000 remaining in the Cottonwood Creek account in the damage program. And this is a request that is simply trying to prioritize this as a potential restoration action that might be accomplished. And there's goals, I think, beyond just the restoration component. Being this close to Deer Lodge, there's some potential educational opportunities to look at what some of these different restoration techniques might be to renaturalize some of these city parcels, perhaps a bit better, and potentially engage students in the community and seeing what some of this can look like, and establishing better vegetation along the creek that is still compatible with the floodplain functions and needs of the creek to get water from point A to point B down to the Clark Fork River.
So you're asking for the $400,000 remaining in the state funding for this, plus $100,000 match from other organizations. Is that kind of what you're hearing?
Up to $100,000. It may not directly come from the Clark Fork Coalition. It could come from multiple sources that we would go out and competitively seek outside funds to try to match this work. So I guess that'd be roughly a 20% cost share ratio.
Any other questions from members of the City Council or public?
Possibly, Andy, just an example of restoration when you say that. would we remove some of the dirt that's in Cottonwood Creek to make it flow better? You know, that's washed in? Or how would we, what type of restoration would you be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. There aren't necessarily pictures to describe what that would look like, but, you know, in places where Cottonwood Creek has been scoured out, there's mostly cobble and boulders and rock and very little opportunity for vegetation to establish. For example, behind the high school, there's a county-owned piece behind the high school. You know, it has a very deep, incised channel in there. It does the purpose, it completes the purpose of keeping the channel in its floodplain. However, there could be opportunities to maybe pull some of that bank back a little ways, allow vegetation to establish along there, provide shade, and allow for trees to grow along the floodplain where maybe there's so much rock and, you know, native soils available for the creek to establish in the floodplain through town.
That helps me, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked Andy to be here tonight, or we're working together on this, pretty much just, as I said earlier, to look at the project description that Park Fork Coalition is looking at submitting for this funding from the state, from the financial sources. And then just pass a resolution to support their application, just to strengthen it a little bit. So that's what you have a copy of for Resolution 2023-R-1. Is there any other questions before we look at that?
I guess one just addition, Jordan, is when we did submit this in 2018, it was incorporated into the restoration plan and recommended for implementation. It hasn't been implemented in the meantime, even though it was supported by that program, and so this is really resubmitting it to let them know it's still on the radar, it's still something that folks are interested in looking at and pursuing. And potentially in this round, there might be a better chance that they will take action in the next 3 to 5 years on this.
Thank you.
Well, I'd make a motion that we approve Resolution 23-R1.
Even though it's a long title, we should probably title it.
We should probably tackle it.
You volunteer to title it?
I will. A resolution by the Deer Lodge City Council supporting the submission of an abstract by the Clark Fork Coalition for Cottonwood Creek to the 2023 update of the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Aquatic and that's a tough word.
That's right?
Resource Restoration Plan as overseen by Montana Natural Resources Damage Program.
Thank you, Mr. Ball. I have a motion to pass the resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further comment from the city council before we move forward? Any comment from the public before we move forward? Jake Ballman?
Yes.
Kurt Felstead?
Yes.
Jackie Greenwood?
Yes.
John Henderson? Yes. Robert Kirsch?
Yes.
John Mollinek? Yes. Joseph Callahan?
Yes.
Gordon Pearson is still absent. 7 yeas, no nays, that motion is passed. All right, going back to item 8, we're going to go back up to item 8A, the fire department appointment, Robert Ray.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, thank you for being here, appreciate it. We'll get you that signed resolution probably tomorrow afternoon when the mayor's in.
Yeah, the deadline's on Friday to submit those, so. Perfect.
As soon as I get it, I'll forward it.
Thank you.
Yep.
We have an opening, currently we have one opening in the fire department. The chief and the deputy chief and myself did an interview with an applicant, Robert Ray, and we agreed to hire him for the fire department. Anybody know Mr. Ray? Maybe I'll let Brett talk a little bit about him. Any questions for the fire chief on the new appointment?
You know, I've known Bobby very little, which is strange for living in the same town, but he's a local kid. Shouldn't say kid, he's a father, but he's younger than me, and he wants to help the community out. And he turned his application in well over a year ago, just on the chance that when we have an opening that we'd interview him for it, and we finally had one. He was still interested, so like the mayor said, 3 of us interviewed him. We all felt like he did fine. I will make note that we do put new firefighters on 6-month probation. So if we don't like his performance coming in, I can basically fire him without cause in that 6 months. So.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for myself or Brett? Any member of the public have any questions? This time I entertain a motion to appoint Mr. Ray to the fire department.
So moved.
I have a motion, I have a second.
Yeah.
A motion and a second. Dick Ballman,
Yes.
Bert Felstead.
Yes.
Jackie Greenwood,
Yes.
John Anderson,
Yes.
Robert Kirsch,
Yes.
John Mollendyke,
Yes.
Joseph Callahan.
Yes.
Mr. Pearson is still absent. We have 7 yeas, no nays. That motion is passed. Well, I don't know that we could approved. Moving on to 8B is the police department appointment. Jason Kinsey. Jason Kinsey filled out an application, he was interviewed, did very well. That went in front of the police commission last
On the 11th.
on the 11th, and that was approved. So we've offered him, we've extended him an appointment, an offer, contingent on approval by the council.
Was he local?
No, ma'am, he comes from, originally he's from out of the country, he's from South Africa, was born.
No.
Lived in the United States for decades. He's, I don't know how old he is, my age-ish, I guess. A little younger maybe.
So this is in addition to the other officers we
Yes,
had?
we had Edward Howes resigned a couple months ago.
Oh, that's
So we're an officer, we've been an officer now for several months. He's currently a police officer, or was currently a police officer in Tennessee, and he's resigned that position, and as long as we're here, he'll get there Monday.
Should we, tell him, like, he's been talking to places for a place to live, and is basically just waiting for our approval. But the mayor and I, watched his interview as well, and we were happy with what he said, so.
Post-certified, correct?
Yeah, he's post-certified in Tennessee. He'd have to do his, legal update training here, so we wouldn't be paying for, a huge post-certification process. So that helps us out, but he has a lot of experience in law enforcement, and he could be good there.
May I ask what part of Tennessee?
Garrison? Gallup.
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 Oh, okay, Eastern.
I reviewed that interview also, and I'm in favor of that.
Good.
And why is moving to Tennessee up here?
He wants to move to Montana. He applied for lots of.
He just wants to get out of that house down there?
Well, I think it's more here.
He likes to be here,
wants to
yeah.
live in Montana.
He's done some vacations here, I think, and he really likes the environment and people, and he wants to come up here.
He interviewed for several positions. Was very close to getting hired in a couple of them around here. Just seemed like when we talked to the other departments, he just he didn't know anything against it. It was just a matter of just somebody who was better. So.
Is this gonna be like that one we got from New York?
I hope not. I hope he's here for 20 years.
There isn't a relocation amount.
There's none requested and none offered.
Excellent.
So I have a motion on the table to approve that. Do I have a second?
So
We don't
moved.
have a
I'm
motion.
sorry.
We do not have a motion.
Can I get a motion to approve his?
So moved.
I have a motion to approve his appointment. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Any further comment from the council before we move on to the vote? Any public comment before we move on to the vote? All right. Motion to approve Jason Kinsey for the police department. Dick Ballman.
Yes?
Kurt Felstead.
Yes.
Jackie Greenwood.
Yes.
John Anderson.
Yes.
Robert Kirsch.
Yes.
John Mollendyke.
Yes.
Joseph Callahan.
Yes.
And Warren Kirschner is still absent. That motion is passed. Yeah, he'll be up here, I believe, next week to be sworn in and just everybody. Moving on to item number C, library board reappointment. I apologize, your too many bears on too many boards. Kathy Bear's name is listed on the agenda. It's actually her husband, Warner Bear, that's actually being reappointed to the library board. Kathy Bear's not on the library board. So, another board. She was just reappointed last year as well. was an error made. If you look at the email, it was sent from her account, but it's from Warner, and we would like to reappoint Warner to the council, or to the library, or whatever it is. I would very much like to put Mr. Bear back on the library board. Are there any comments or questions from the public or the council on that? And I would entertain a motion to reappoint Mr. Bear to the library board.
I would so move.
I have a motion from Dick. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Dick Ball.
Yes.
Yes. Felstead. Jackie Greenwood.
Yes.
John Henderson.
Yes.
Robert Kirsch.
Yes.
John Mollenbeck.
Yes.
Joseph Callahan.
Yes.
And Mr. Kirsch is still absent. 7 yeas, no nays. Item number D, you'll see an email in your packet from Kathy Johnson from the county. Basically, we appointed these folks to that board not quite a year ago, last summer. And she asked that we just reword all the appointments for the county boards all end at the same date, at the end of December every year. And when we had passed it, I had passed it for the year's term to end in the middle of the year. And she just asked that we extend all those board appointments out to December 31st. So that's all that change was. It's just instead of one going, I think one was going to go in March and one was going to go in July or something. She's asking that we just appoint those until December 31st of those years. So that's all I'm doing is just clarifying an appointment that we made last year.
So it'd be the end of this year.
It would be 2025 for any other appointment.
So
instead
adding 3 years to their appointment.
No, they were already appointed for that many years. It's just clarifying that the appointment's up in December, not in the summertime.
When the council
Yeah.
approved it, yeah.
When I just put it to that many years out, 2025, at the date that we passed it, and it should have been the 31st of December.
Oh, okay.
I didn't realize that the county did it that way. It makes sense. She says that way they keep track of it better. Just every year, all the boards get re-upped on the same day.
Well, I move we accept.
I would appreciate it. Is that a motion?
Yes.
I have a motion to just change those appointment dates. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions from the council or the members of the public before we move forward? All right, Dick Ballman.
Yes.
Kurt Felstead.
Yes.
Jackie Beaver.
Yes.
John Henderson.
Yes.
Robert Kirsch.
Yes.
John Mollenbeck. Yes. Joseph Callahan.
Yes.
And Gordon Kirsch is still absent. 7 yeas, no nays. Alrighty, moving on to item E, ordinance 2023-3, codify new American Legal Code of Ordinances of Georgia. Anybody volunteer to title it for us?